When you're so used to teaching and training and being out there and, just in the street sharing and then it's done. Like doing a Zoom privates are like the most challenging and most exciting things for me because what I thought was the magic of the touch, now just by able to articulate those movements, it's really exciting to know that there's a possibility for this thing to grow and live not in person, where eventually, who knows what that will bring, but you got to start somewhere. So just take a pause, man, and take a breath. Let it breathe, as some of the finest DJs will say. Let it breathe.
Hey yo. Let's go. We make albums like we come from Compton. Rap Duke Silver, Tanya's Von Swanson. Wearing the shoes, still watching the unboxing. Worrying too, still art's the best option. Who's stopping? Keep rocking, locked in. I don't really got another option. Even if I've lost my voice, I would find acapellas, drop them in Logic and Collage in my collab.
What's good, everybody? What's good? Welcome back to yet another episode of Off the Strength, where we're giving you the inside look into all things wellness culture. I'm a trainer called Tony, and of course, with me, I have a gentleman of extraordinary lead.
KR Jones is in the virtual building.
There we go. What's up, Kyle? How you feeling today, my man?
I'm feeling great. I'm here.
And of course, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all types from near and far, we want to send a salute out to the homies Troy and Corey out there in listener land. They are doing well, but we are in store for a treat. We have another special guest joining us virtually, alum of the Off the Strength cast, friend of the show, we'd like to say. What's going on, big homie, Mr. Sproga himself, the Chief Ergonomics Officer. Man, Dan, what's going down?
Tony, good to hear your voice. Good to see you. Let me just start by saying that this right here is very important for everyone to get a download on, and that's why I'm really grateful to be able to share this information. Kyle, didn't forget about you. When we getting that one-on-one game going?
Whenever you ready.
We got to do the virtual one-on-one.
We may have to take it to the PlayStation, but we're still going to take it.
Yeah, it's happening.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to see this tournament come down. It's like it's 2K.
I'm only getting better by the day, I'm ready.
Spreading all types of love, my man. First and foremost, before we jump into the day's shenanigans, man, how are you doing? What's been going on with you? And talk to us a little bit about how you're moving through since we last left off, my man. I know a lot of things have changed. Let us know what's going on your front, my friend.
As of last week, I was furloughed from WeWork, where I was drawing a check. And that's an interesting pivot on my end, where I still love to teach and to share this information, and that funnel was just kind of shifted a little bit for me. My wife and I, we were in Long Island. We quarantined ourselves. We were with my mother-in-law, and then we had to shift back to the city, hold the fort down out here. She's doing well. My wife's doing well. Our dogs are well. We're doing what everyone's trying to do, just, stay clean, stay hydrated, and I mean, it's just nuts, man. It's just nuts. I just got back from the post office where we first started this Zoom session. I'm dropping packages off. I'm pivoting, and I'm excited about it. So that's where, Sproga Volume 2 is right now.
There we go. We're going to jump back into that, and I want to make sure that we give them a little background for our listeners who might not have gotten a chance to hear you on the previous episodes or at the live show. But before we jump into that, man, the beautiful thing about having a career as opposed to a job, then, is that a career is not bound by the building that you're in. It's not bound by the letters that you see over the wall when you're walking into a space, or even what's embroidered on that t-shirt, my friend. The career starts inside of you, and it's inside that mind. So I know that a guy like yourself, master of the arts of movement artists of all types, are going to be looking for a little bit of a new reality right now. And you hit the nail on the head when you talked about pivot, because we have to have this thing called adaptability now more so than ever before. You have the capability to engage and ignite and really find that spark that's inside of people in person. I would say that is also a skill set that I know is going to translate to this new medium, my friend. We just got to get used to the new environment. So I understand exactly that standpoint and that point of departure in terms of the time of uncertainty and the need to thrive, but they call it survival of the fittest for a reason, my man. They call it that for a reason, only the strong, my man. And I know exactly where you are on that side. So Dan, as we're jumping into this, I want you to catch up some of the new friends out there that might not know what this off the strength, continuum is. Give them a little bit about the background of Sproga and what you are as the Chief Ergonomics Officer. Let's start that conversation right here, jumping into and then we can talk about why you were running around inside the post office today.
Right. So I appreciate that. I'm a newbie to New York. I married into the city. My wife is originally from Brooklyn, and actually we met in Detroit, where we moved from over 2 years ago now. And when I first moved here, I just saw my lane of personal training and teaching yoga and everything that I've been doing. Before I left, I started this experience that I labeled Sproga. And it came out of a spark of inspiration, if you will, at the coffee shop. And as it goes, you order a shot of Spro, which is a euphemism for espresso. Honestly, when I order a shot of espresso, I don't say Spro, but it was on the chalkboard and I just went with that. The Spro created a flow. So you knew where I was about to go, right?
Feeling those
so
bars
Spro,
already.
caged, poetic justice, jail cells, let us all rebel. I took that term Spro and I just immediately put the ga and got the Sproga. That's pretty much it. It was the yo. Everything is a rhyme to me, and then I create a reason, I create a path. So Sproga was initially an experience with a barista who had the same kind of passion that I had for yoga that they had for coffee. Somebody that just had the same kind of passion that I had for movement and meditation that they had for coffee. Started in Detroit, and I was doing little pop-ups here and there, and then developed a little residency in Detroit. Shout out to the Foundation Hotel. And things were starting to bubble and percolate, and then we ended up moving. So we moved to New York. I started a project by Equinox with this concept, although I changed the name of it because I wasn't comfortable with having Equinox own that name that I worked as hard to. And that goes for anybody, if you're not comfortable giving any pennies to the dollar on somebody that have heard nothing, I would think twice before you sign that dotted line. So Project by Equinox was short-lived. Partnered with a mutual brand that we are all familiar with, Hyperice. Now, to reflect just a moment, Sproga was a combination of meditation, yoga, a shot of espresso, because it's all fun and games in that capacity. And then the one component that I just fell in love with was when I first used the Hyperice vibrating foam roller. I felt this immediate just kind of shift in my tissue, and things started to just really transform from there. So I thought everybody should experience this, and that's where I went with it. So I became known as that guy in Detroit doing that thing that other people were scratching their head about and others knew what was up. So coming out here to New York and still creating those experiences, I tried it at Project by Equinox, and then I went to Bandier, Studio B, which is a great vibe, and there was amazing teachers on that train as well, and so grateful for Jennifer and that program. And then eventually that actually shifted to Los Angeles, where we didn't move to LA, we stayed here in New York. So now I'm figuring out what I'm going to do in terms of how can I make this more accessible? And there was an opportunity to partner up with WeWork. And what started out is just teaching the same kind of class, the same kind of concept, and offering this three-dimensional movement experience. Afterwards, I would go up to the headquarters and I would see all these people that were taking my class, and their posture would just be like, not to be judgmental, but fucking terrible. I mean, let's just put it out there, right? And sure, I've learned even beyond that now that posture isn't good or bad, and there's no like X and green check for posture, because posture is as dynamic as all of our personalities. It's just a dynamic, three-dimensional, ever morphing, ever expanding thing. So I empower people into that mentality now, but there is a North Star. There's something you kind of want to like set your position in your pose on, that in yoga is the same way. Once you know these kind of fundamentals, then everything else can kind of morph and flow until you find you're just right. And then as soon as you're just right, you can move and you can pivot and you can lunge and you can do all the things that you need to do to be a triple threat.
So I want to make sure I go back through and punctuate a little bit of this. So first of all, the Motor City Maharishi is in the building, folks. He's coming back inside here. He's blessing you with all different types of things, giving you that good vibe from Rock City itself, but making sure that you're moving good. The rock is not going to be stuck in place. It's going to be rolling down the streams of life that we call this reality. And he's transitioned that from a lot of different positions. So it wasn't something that was fixed in any of the particular locations that he had that manifest in. It was something that was coming from that love of art, much like everything else. And just like you just finished going through, Dan, all art has rules. Those rules, once learned, are meant to be played with and meant to be moved around, right? So there's going to be things that are going to be more preferred in your alignment. But once you do have the alignment down right and you have the freedom to move through that alignment in a way that's not going to be dangerous to you, then you can start to bend the rules a little bit. And that's when you get into your free form, your jazz, so to speak. You get to play a little bit on that high note.
Jazzmatazz, baby.
Exactly. Right? You're getting that guru, man, getting inside.
Gifted, unlimited rhymes, universal.
See, now we're in here. Now we're bringing it to the table. Young Jones, what you thinking on this, my man?
I mean, YogaDan, man, he's what, our alumni 3 times over. I don't think we've had anybody 3 times before. So
3X to the show. This is a monumentous occasion.
Do I get a jacket?
A lanyard or something?
Do I get a dope mask?
Yeah, man, we got to get the off the strength mask.
Gotta figure that out. But knowing his story and just always hearing him put it together always continues to inspire me as far as a movement practitioner, as far as yoga, and understanding that there will always be room for growth. Like, you will always have to adapt, like you said at the top of the show. So you may have started this business in one place, but the nature of it is that it's going to change over time. So, I'm just excited to see and hear more about what Sproga's going to do moving forward.
I appreciate that, Kyle. You inspire me as well. I mean, we're all here to just kind of grow and become more pliable and malleable and reverse the aging process, essentially, because at the end of the day, gravity is always going to be coming down on us and the floor is always going to be underneath us, and what we do in between and in that time we have is how we can go ahead and just, defy gravity and dunk from the free throw line.
That's the fight that is life, man. But so hold on, stay right there for a second, because that's a vibe that I think we need to go into, because we're using a lot of big words. And I know I understand what you're saying, man. And I know my man over here, Young Jones, understands what you're saying. But I want you to explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old, Dan. What the hell is ergonomics? Because I keep hearing this word come around and we're talking about, we in the wizard talk, we deep into mathematics, but I don't even know if we broke it out and stretched it out a little bit as to what that actually means. So if I'm a 5-year-old Tony right now, I'm really inquisitive. I want to understand, what the hell does that mean? And how does that tie into this whole world of up and down polarity that you were just giving me?
Ergonomics is the positioning of the human body within their work environment, the way things are created, the reason the pencil is the way the pencil is, and the reason why the carpenter pencil is the way the carpenter pencil is. Everything that you see, everything that you feel and touch, somebody out there had input in the ergonomics of it. And that is the nerd in me that was like, I've always known this. And you know why? I'll tell you why. Because I'm 6'8" and this world wasn't built for me. And I am grateful AF to have that frame. And then also to have that frame of mind to understand I'm not the woe is me type, like this wasn't made for me type of thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to adapt. So if the opportunity arises, I'm going to build something to fit and suit my needs, just like some of my clients and some people who are taller than me. And then just same equal for people who are shorter. So the design element, and this is the fascinating thing, it's the design element that really is my passion. I got a passion for fashion, but beyond the fashion is the design. What's their ethos? What is their perspective? Why did they create this and do that?
I would like to play devil's advocate and think of my personal definition of ergonomics would have always been, if I am running a company, how can I get the most work out of you as my employee? In hindsight, yes, it'll make you healthier, but ultimately I want you to be able to do more work for me. And that's always where I thought the base or the root of ergonomics was, in my opinion. It was just like, all right, yeah, this is the technology and the design of things, but also working 40 hours a week. How can I keep you here, keep you engaged, get the most out of you so you don't have that 3 o'clock burnout ratio or whatever it is. And that's where I see the basis of ergonomics in my mind.
So on that level of it, when you're dialed in the flow, there's nothing in your way. Everything is within arm's reach. Everything is stacked the way it's supposed to be stacked, and you're able to pivot and shift, keep your head on a swivel. What happens is, if you're not in that mentality, then everything becomes like an expender of energy. You just expend it all. And so the productivity is, as someone who's seen it firsthand, when you get somebody plugged in and when you know where your seat is, you're comfortable in that seat. You can then be heard in that seat. Within that realm, your productivity is a relationship of your time and the effort that it takes to do a task. And what creates these lulls is when you're lost and you don't have the ability to orientate yourself, reorganize yourself, go through this exercise program that I've been really passionate about and sharing. But beyond that, it genuinely comes down to, you want to make sure that you're not going to burn out, right? And that burnout is going to come when you're burning that candle at both ends of the stick and you don't have a chance to pause, to reflect, and to recognize like, oh, maybe my screen and my keyboard is affecting my neck and my back. Maybe my feet not touching the ground or the way that I'm seated is affecting through that kinetic chain. And that's how all of these things kind of flow in together, where ergonomics is simply just a word. There's a definition, but then it's how you define for each individual, what is that going to mean?
Well, there's definitely a design element to that, for sure, undoubtedly. And let me just put a little bit more sauce on it, tie that bow together. So it is your relationship to the implements in which that you're using inside the world and how they relate to what your body positioning is. We'll throw another buzzword out there inside that proprioception. So if we're looking at how you move in space and your relation as your definition to what my office surrounding is, now I could kind of understand why people might have not had optimal posture when they were showing up. Because typically, when you're inside that office space, what's getting short and tight? There is a physiological task that comes along with each and one of these things. And they do correlate closely to a lot of the commonplace ills that you see inside of a workforce that is largely sedentary. So the sedentary position, just by and large, is not something that this human system was supposed to be designed for, just going back into prehistoric us. So the seated position is going to shorten the hip flexors, going to turn off the glutes.
Everything becomes like, oh, and then,
the hamstrings might get even lengthened, but you can't really use the contractile forces inside there. Combined with the fact that the monitor might be a little too far forward, my head starts to jut, and then my shoulders start to move because really my thoracic cavity is compromised and I'm trying to work through stress, because stress still exists in that workspace. And as I'm working through stress typing, I'm not breathing diaphragmatically because that's locked down. I'm breathing into my traps. And as I breathe into my traps, I get short and tight and I start to get that de-evolution position. I start to get a little bit more rounded coming forward. So it's not a
de-evolution,
wonder.
I love it.
Yeah, so we de-evolve, right? And it's not a wonder as to why low back pain was one of the most commonplace reported illnesses inside of the workstation. But then, lo and behold, the workstation has moved into the house, and we have moved and transferred discomfort right into the goddamn house. We can't have this.
Right.
We got to stop this right here, nip it in the bud. What is the opportunity that you see before you as everybody has now shifted from work, home, play to work and home happening in the same space, and often even play? How could we get to this whole ergonomic awakening is really why I wanted to have this conversation, because I know a lot of people out there are getting short and tight. Again, it's just getting short and tight in a different spot.
I got your back. I got your back.
Quite literally.
You already know. You already know. So I've been studying this and have a couple certifications now just to kind of, like solidify the profession. Just put it this way. There was a great aha moment for me where I didn't know we were all be working at home. But a passion of mine is a work-live environment. That's something that in Detroit, they really, really promoted. So you have your workplace below you, whether it's a store or your office, whatever, and then you live above it. But there's a separation, right? You at least got a level. And in New York, that is a luxury that in Detroit was a little bit more approachable. Let's put it that way, right? So now, because there is no luxury of that space, your dining room table that you're eating at is also your desk in the daytime. And that's fine. And you're in good hands. This, to me, I'm excited about, because what I was creating before COVID, it just so happens that nothing changed. So I've been working with exercises and tools that help to facilitate more or less the ultimate way to sit, but then translate that biomechanically to standing. So you can flow from your standing to your seated position, and how you elevate or lower that is through other tools. So you need to have an external keyboard. Okay, everybody listening out there in off the strength land. I got one on Amazon 2 years ago. It's pink, and you also need to have an external mouse. Two of these things are a must. It was $30. And yes, I don't know your budget, but they got nicer ones. They may even have less nicer ones. But $30 is going to save your ass 30 years. See how I use that 30-30, right? At least 30 years, right? Of just that constant nagging of your neck and your shoulder and your mid-back, your thoracic, all of those areas we call MSDs, muscular, skeletal dysfunctions, disorders that eventually become a disease.
Okay. Keyboard and mouse are external. Why is that important that they're external from like your typical
Because
setup?
I'm going to give you that five-year-old download right now, Tony. I already know
go.
you know. I already know you know. Everybody right now who's listening, I just want you to, if you're not in a seat right now, take a seat, find your chair, the one that you're at the desk in. If you're on bed, just get up, keep it moving, right? And all I want you to do is look straight ahead. And as you look straight ahead, you want to then recognize that's where your computer screen really should be. And that is fine. Raise yourself up so that it hits that height. But now, using your imagination, take your hands and reach for that keyboard. There's a disconnect where, because the laptop is convenient and it's a portability vibe, we also need to recognize that the difference between a desktop and a laptop is the desktop had a separate keyboard. So I can take that screen on my desktop and I can put it at the right height, and that keyboard is always going to stay down on the desk. And you're looking for that 90-degree angle, that right angle in your shoulder and your elbow and your wrist, with a little bit of flexion, not too much, just a little bit of flexion. You don't want to have any cushion underneath your wrist for your carpal tunnel syndrome. That's only going to exacerbate it, only going to just baby it. And I'm not about babying things. I'm about removing those issues that you're dealing with. The reason why you have carpal tunnel, you weren't born with it. It's not hereditary. I may be controversial here. It's the same with a bunion on your foot. These are not hereditary things. These are from repetitive movement patterns that, without proper guidance, will facilitate dysfunction at a level where the bone will eventually shape and mold to the movement itself. That's where the bunion forms, because it's just gravity's just pushing its weight down on you. So my approach is, Tony, from the ground up. It's all fine and dandy to get your ergonomics right from that position there, but everything starts from the ground up.
Right on, man. I'm definitely picking up a lot of stuff right here. I just want to go back through and pepper in a little bit more of that detailed information. So the body is an amazing system. It's amazing at adaptation, much like we talked about at the very helm of this conversation. Now, that adaptation, unfortunately, is not at the best of interest for what it's going to do. Is looking to make things as easy as possible. So even an inefficient move done over a long term or long point of time is going to have an adaptation made for it. And that's why we have this dysfunction that ends up taking place. So we have our natural or our normal or our optimal baseline that ends up getting compromised due to the need to adjust to what our external stimulus is, be it the foot position, be it the hands being higher than the wrist should be, or the neck jutting forward. Your body's going to look to do that motion that you're already doing and make it as easy as possible. So if I could rely on a joint as opposed to the muscle, I'm saving energy. If I could rely on changing the shape literally of the spine as I'm sitting down, then I could save energy, and I don't have to use that energy from all the intercostal muscles or anything like that to keep that posture as aligned as possible. So getting back to that rooted sense, getting back to that new connection is about that whole awakening. And Dan, we've been talking about this great awakening in this time, this post-COVID era. I don't know what we're going to call it, PC. We're in the PC era, and everything needs to get the great awakening. And as we're doing these deep downloads, my friend, and we're getting into the understanding as to why it is this might have not have been the pathway that you were going towards initially, and you might not have seen that linear progression through here. I don't think a lot of stuff in this life is ever going to be linear, but it just so happens that you're serving an itch that you needed to scratch, and that transitioned into a business opportunity. And I do like that. I do like the way that brain evolves and how that continues to go forward. I would ask you, before we go deeper into where you want to take the business and where you want to take this opportunity, I want to understand, if you had to reset, you wanted to alleviate some kind of back pain or something that I might be finding that wasn't really here initially, what's a couple of quick tips that I can get?
Absolutely, my man. Let me pull a sentence from Tony's playbook and let me unpack that.
Look at that.
You like that, Kyle?
Of course, we always unpacking.
Let me unpack that. So what you want to first do is, if your feet don't touch the floor, don't fail me now, right? If my feet don't fail me now, make sure your feet touch the floor. That's the first line of defense. But then if your feet are flat on the floor, that's a rigid position in your ankle to just stay like that. That's why people kind of oscillate and they do all sorts of things and they cross. What I tend to really enjoy is I'll take a half a foam roller. I'll place it underneath my heels. That will elevate my heels up, which lifts my butt up. So then I have a nice flexion in the foot. So the heel is higher and the foot is flat, and it creates a nice little bend in that ankle joint. And if you don't have a half foam roller, you can use a blanket, you can use a beach towel. So then you can work through that dorsiflexion that didn't exist when it was a flat ground surface.
So we're treating the feet. We got it.
By the way, pivot real quick.
Got it.
There was no line at Whole Foods, and I felt like Ice Cube, today was a good day. Moving back to this conversation. Then I also recommend you have a strap. You can use your robe. You can use a belt. But you want to strap your thighs. So that will prevent this excessive external rotation of the hips that happens. And when you externally rotate the hips, the back of your body shuts off. Your sacrum, the flow of energy, it shuts off. So if you can keep your thighs in a more neutral position, meaning that they're not adducting or knocking in, and they're not abducting completely away from each other, but they're stacked so that you have your knee underneath your heel, and your sits bones and your hips and your knees are at that pretty much 90-degree angle. But you also want to have your butt up a little bit higher. So that's another thing you need. You need to have some cushion on your cushion. So put something underneath your seat to give you some of that same contact that you would with underneath your heels, that same kind of little bit of lift, because your heels are your wheels. And if your wheels are flat, you ain't moving and grooving, baby. You are just slugging along. And when you sit in a slouch, you're sitting on your kidneys like a lowrider, and you're just scraping the pavement. If you think about your 64 Impala, it's just scrape, 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 scrape. And we want to bounce. We want to hit those switches. So get yourself up high.
Let me ride, man. We got to get back in there.
So you got the strap around your thighs. And once you do that, I discovered this through Katona Yoga, which is the practice that I've been practicing since I moved out here. They're all about boundaries, and I love it because I am very much a rebel who doesn't like boundaries and doesn't like labels. But in this practice, it's so important to have a good reference for boundaries. So the strap are like extra ligaments, and you strap your thighs together. And then you take a yoga block, and if you don't have a yoga block, you can roll up the sweatshirt, put it in between your thighs. So that will prevent your knees from knocking in. And then you have that strap, and then you take your thighs and you shoot them into your strap, so you abduct, and that turns on your IT band, your TFL, and your glute. Very important, because when you sit, they call it gluteal amnesia. That's some bullshit. There's no such thing as gluteal amnesia, okay? It's that you don't have access to those muscular lines of energy because you're sitting on it. And if you're sitting on it, you're not working it. So this is what I do. This is how I rock. So if I'm in the morning and I'm writing and I'm working on my program, which I call this program, I'm having myself plugged in. I have my behind me. I'm on my sit bones instead of my tailbone. That's a very important one. Those landmarks, those ischial tuberosities, those butt bones. You want those as your landmarks. That's what you want to sit on, not your tailbone. Once you have those landmarks on your sit bones, you have all that plugged in. That really is the setup. Yeah.
I like it. You're keeping them rooted. So from the ground up, you're making sure that we're getting something to make the feet happy, keep the hips engaged, and make sure that everything is not getting turned off.
The heels are your wheels.
Heels are your wheels. I like it, man. It's definitely in there.
Air in the tires.
You can't have them deflated out here, man. And I think that's definitely going to be something that people need to pay attention to when you're transitioning to your home co-work station, kind of like what man is saying over here. The dining room table might not have been where you were sitting before, but now let's just be a little bit more connected. Let's be a little bit more alert, and hopefully we can take those tips. And then you go ahead and shoot me whatever kind of links or videos that you want me to put inside the show notes. I'm definitely going to throw them in there so they can know exactly how to get to you, my man. I love every aspect of that. That's going to be the things that people need, especially now, because we don't know what tomorrow holds in terms of returning back to the normative workspace. So in our new normal, holistic lifestyle seems like it's going to be something that's going to be taking a little bit more of a higher priority. At least people are now currently a lot more alert and present and aware as to how preventative health strategies are going to be the things that you need to invest in going long term. So it's not just about the outcomes, it's about what am I feeling, how am I getting there, and how can I modify life so that I am living it in the most optimal and healthy way. So Dan, this is exactly why I wanted to talk to you, my man.
As a yoga teacher that started to become more deeply interested in the biomechanics of things and learning a little bit more about the ground reaction forces, and then studying with Gray Institute and having these deeper dives into something that initially was like a downward dog, if you will, and then understanding 3 planes of motion and being able to facilitate a 3-dimensional grid of the human body. I took with my own 2 eyes what I saw in front of me and started to break it down into why somebody's chest was tight, why their thoracic was restricted, why their hip flexors weren't tight perhaps, but were weak. And those types of things from muscle testing and like different modalities of understanding this. I witnessed firsthand, Tony and Kyle, that these people who were coming to my class, and I would spend 50 minutes just dialing in and driving it in. And they would get it. They would finally get it. And it would be like the most amazing thing. And I would go upstairs and I would see them in their workspace. And the desk would be too high. The seat would be all squishy and low. And they would just be all, and I'd be like, I felt bad for them. So I knew that they had the capacity to learn something new, but then their environment wasn't facilitating that. So I went to WeWork and I said, hey, I got this idea. What if I can create a yoga class that they don't need to go downstairs? I can go upstairs. It's only going to take 15 minutes. I'll get everybody moving in all 3 planes of motion and feeling fluid and lucid like they should. And that, Kyle, will go back to that productivity. They'll be more productive. They'll be more energized. They'll be more enthusiastic about their work. They'll be happier. Things started to happen. They started to percolate. It was the perfect storm. And who wouldn't want that? You know, that to me was, at the end of the day, I'm not doing anything. I'm not like a chiropractor, like adjusting them and subluxing them. They're doing it themselves. So I position their bodies in these certain ways and then have them facilitate all these different patterns that, remember, start from the ground up. So things started to change. I started to get really good feedback. Exciting to see that I'm making a difference. That has transitioned into this new normal, if you will. I'm no longer able to go up to your office because your office doesn't exist. We don't know how long that will be. We're not going back to work on Friday, guys, but I'm able to share with you the same techniques that I was using in the office at your home now, with a whole kit that I've curated that will help bring you back into the alignment you deserve, the well-being you've earned. And my best example is my beautiful wife. I am speechless now when I see her at our kitchen table. That's our desk, or her desk, I should say. I mean, she has nailed it.
I'm always thankful for the deep download that my brother's going to hit me with. But I don't want to be all just locking you into one lane, because this is the Off the Strength show. We got to talk about some fun stuff that's outside of that box too, my man. So I want to transition and go into a little bit of a different avenue, if you will. And I'd like to take a look at the landscape that we have, and I'd like to take a look at the things that we're facing currently, and I got to ask you, my man, when it's time for you to unplug and it's time for you to sit back and relax, how are you finding a little bit more peace of mind these days? What's something that you're going into and something that you're doing to give you a little bit more gratefulness, or to get you a little bit less caught in the buzz that is life going on out here?
I ripped my cable box out. I returned it. We've got our own stimulus check because of that. Somewhere on the upwards of $1,200 a year, no longer having to pay that note. And that's brought a tremendous amount of peace of mind. I was getting caught up. I mean, we're definitely over a month and change now. Just listening to the same story and propaganda over and over again has been exhausting. So that's been really helpful. I'm always reading. I'm always reading, either Audible or an actual book. I got this one. I'm going to give you guys this one right here.
Okay, creating brand energy. I like where he's going with it. Kath Sutherland.
Big brand energy.
Big brand energy. I'm here for it.
Kath Sutherland. It's all about that BBD. That was funny.
That might be something different.
I don't know. Yeah, just always keeping that noodle, sharp. Keeping that weapon drawn, because some people use the noodle and some people use the muscle. And as we already know, to make that perfect soup, you got to use the noodle and the muscle.
Got to get them both. And it's back to that harmony and balance on that aspect, man. I want to ask you, what's the last thing that you did? And you kind of already talked about what you did for the good day, but what's something that you did recently that made you unapologetically happy, Dan?
Man, on everything, I just dropped off 5 boxes to the post office that I know they're going to be happy. I'm proud to ship these things out. That really, that was a moment, man. That was my entrepreneurial moment where I'm no longer just a product as a human being, but now I'm putting a product out into the universe. And, I just, just celebrating that. Actually, the greatest story was I had these 5 boxes, right, carrying them. Post office is like 4 or 5 blocks away. This guy who was like, "Where are you headed? I have a hand truck. Do you need it?" And I was like, "Hell yeah." This guy brought his hand truck. He sprayed it with Lysol like he was spraying mosquitoes. Like, I don't even know how to explain what I visually saw. He was like spraying the Lysol. I was like, man, I got gloves. I'm just not in that headspace where I'm that worried, but I was grateful for him and his precautionary measures. But I was able to take that cart and take it to the post office, and the struggle was a lot less. And he was just, put it back in my truck when you're done. And I was like, man, thank you so much. He was like, yeah, any way I can help. And it's 7:00 every night, man. My wife and I, we bang on the pots, we clap. Our neighbors are getting into it. It just gives me chills to know that, this is a moment in time where, the little things you don't think you're doing are making a huge difference just by acknowledging those that are still out there, the frontline workers, man, the ones that are keeping this economy and this thing, still up and running. You feel me?
Hell yeah, brother. It's the small victories. We find them all throughout there, and you celebrate the human element whenever you get a chance to see it, man. Now so more than ever. Jones, how you feeling about that, brother?
Sounds amazing to me. I'm grateful for YogaDan always coming through and downloading, giving us the knowledge, keeping us informed. I wish that we could do this in person, but I'm looking forward to what life is going to be like afterwards, man. So I'm always around to share knowledge, shoot shit, learn, to help the people with the movement that they need.
Precisely. It's always going to be one of those things that we just keep sharing and we keep growing and we keep elevating, man. And Dan, since you've been on the show so many times, it doesn't even make sense to ask you the off the strength question. I want to ask you to wrap this thing up. What's one of the biggest lessons that you learned about yourself in this time, man? How do you plan on taking that forward?
Oh, great question, Tony. Initially, I took a pause and I was really cool with it. I didn't beat myself up over that pause. Comfortable going, it's just not worth it. I'm not going to beat myself up over, especially your well-being. Is if you don't have anything to give, there's nothing for you to do. If I was feeling kind of run down or push myself in order to produce and create product that isn't up to par. So I took the time, I collected my thoughts, I was able to reevaluate how I was going to move and groove and position myself. I had to find a new company to source some of my product from. And it took a minute. That was important because I was in a headspace where, like, you know, if I don't do something, then I don't feel like I'm worthy. When you're so used to teaching and training and being and out there and, you know, just in the streets and just sharing, and then it's done. And doing a Zoom privates are like the most challenging and most exciting things for me, because what I thought was the magic of the touch, now just by able to articulate those movements, it's really exciting to know that there's a possibility for this thing to grow and live not in person, where eventually, who knows what that will bring, but you got to start somewhere. So just take a pause, man, and you know, take a breath. Let it breathe, as some of the finest DJs will say. Let it breathe.
Letting it breathe, stretching it out, man. I definitely understand that. And finding a way to touch when touch is not warranted. Sounds like you got a new color to paint in, my friend. That's always going to be an exciting thing to do. You know, you rise to the occasion. And like I said at the top of this interview, you got a career, my man. Nobody's ever going to put a box inside that career. Never put them in a box if the shit eats tapes, is what I'm trying to tell you. My man, big homie Dan, you got to let the good people know where they can find you, how they can get at you, and what they need to do in order to understand what this Ergonomics life is going to be doing moving forward.
The website's about to drop, and the Sproga setup comes out May 1st. Sproga.com, SPROGA.com. You can find me at Mr. YogaDan on Instagram, as well as Sprogonomics, NOMICS. Hello at Sproga.com is where you can always ask me anything. I'm here to share ruthlessly this information. I'm genuine about that. I think that there's more than enough to go around, and if you're down to collaborate, you know, if you want to pontificate, meditate, let's all participate.
There we go. Okay. And all of them, man. He finished off with a triple word score. That's why he's the Motor City Maharishi. The big give, baby. He's coming back inside here.
The big give, baby.
The big give. Oh, man. Yo, Dan, always a pleasure, brother. Thank you so much for being you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for helping people heal and move the right way, man. Movement Artists United, always going to be something that takes us forward.
Wrap it up, send it in the mail, sign, seal, deliver it.
Once again, it's been another fantastic episode of Off the Strength. I'm a trainer called Tony.
K.R. Jones.
Shout out to the homies Troy and Corey. Peace and much love to everybody out there listening. Stay healthy. We'll see you soon.